Hello and welcome to another Stamp with Amy K Facebook Live video. And today I'm going to show you how we made a card with the Delicate Petals stamp set bundle from the Stampin' Up! January to June 2021 mini catalog. And it's another one of those bundles that's kind of hidden a little bit in the catalog. And it's a good one. Another good set of dies that go with it, which, of course, I love dies. Anything that's got dies, I'm automatically, yep, sold. But it's a really pretty stamp set. So this is the card that we're going to be making today. And I used some of the True Love Designer Series paper for the background, did a little bit of coloring on the stamped images, added a little ribbon, and that was kind of it for the card. So pretty easy. Hey, Debbie and Barbara and Pam and Lori and Akiko and anybody else, and Bree and Rosie, I see y'all are here. So thanks so much for joining. And Debbie, I don't know if I said hi to Debbie already, but thanks for joining today. I appreciate you being here. And of course, I just looked at my screen. It's all crazy crooked. Anyway, one of these days, I'll get it all right on the first try, and then y'all will leave because you'll be like, I don't know who this lady is. Okay. Hey Karen, thanks for joining today. So this is our card we're going to be playing with. This is the stamp set. It's really pretty. I mean, it's got some nice sentiments in it. I love that it's kind of got the mixed font sentiments in it. A good general, there's a thank you and a birthday, and just sometimes something wonderful happens to someone who absolutely deserves every good thing. So happy that you're my friend, and a for you. So again, just a good general stamp set. And again, it's called Delicate Petals, and it is a photopolymer stamp set. So it's one of those that's clear and you can see through it for your stamping. Hey, Jillian, and glad you like my card, Akiko. I appreciate that. This is the die set that coordinates with it, and it's called the Lacy Petals dies. And the larger die here coordinates with a flower image. And then this outline, there's one that's stuck in the middle. This is actually two dies. So this little leaf and this little leaf cut out the stamped leaves here, and then there are leaves that cut out, or leaves, petals, I guess is what these are on here. So there are petal dies that cut out the two petals, and then there's one that cuts out the flower center, and again, just kind of some accessory pieces. So if you wanted to just cut from cardstock or something a flower and have some really pretty details on it that are embossed in it, and it cuts out a couple of the little spaces down here, but it also embosses kind of a stitched look for the leaves and the petals on the flower. And then here are some layering pieces as well, and then again just some accessory leaf die cuts that you have here. So again, it's a really pretty stamp set, one of those that's kind of tucked towards the back of the catalog. So I didn't necessarily see it right away on my first pass through, but I'm glad that I found it. So hey, Shelly and Patricia, thanks so much for joining today. So that's the stamp set. And let me set that aside. The other thing that I used on here, of course, this is like my second go-to between the Hippo and Friends dies and this one and my stitched rectangles. I could pretty much cut out anything. So this one is the one that I use for the sentiment. I use this kind of rectangular with the little corner notches in it. And I don't know how well it shows up on camera, but it shows up when it's in your hand. If you can't see it, there's a little bit of embossing that happens when you use this set of dies, a couple of them anyway. So some of them are the stitched edge, but a couple of them have a really nice kind of more polished embossed look, which I love, especially when you're doing something that's a little fancier. So hey, Susan and Marilyn, thanks for joining, and Denise as well. Thanks for hopping in today and saying hello. All right, a couple things before we get going on our card. I just wanted to remind you about the Hey Chick and the Hey Birthday Chick stamp set bundles are available. If you are looking for information on them, you can go out to my blog, which is stampwithamyk.com, and there's a little link up on the sidebar, as well as, I've got it kind of woven throughout some of the pages on my blog. But this is the same Hey Chick stamp set from Celebration a couple of years ago. They have added some new dies with it. If you don't have the stamp set, you can get them both together in a bundle. If you already have the stamp set, you can get just the dies. And then we have the Hey Birthday Chick stamp set. Hey Mary, thanks for joining. So yes, you definitely need to order the dies, Marilyn, if you don't have them yet. So hey Linda, thanks so much. We've got the Hey Birthday Chick stamp set bundle. Again, this is available in the January to June mini catalog. The dies are not, so this is like a little add-on piece, so you can get it together in a bundle or each one individually. And this runs through June 30th of this year, so make sure you get on getting them because they're really cool and they're really cute. And then the butterfly bouquet and butterfly Brilliance stamp set bundle is now available for customers. So if you have not seen it, you're missing out because it's a good one. It is a very large background stamp with some really awesome coordinating dies. And this is the Butterfly Brilliance stamp set bundle. You can get it as bundled together and save 10%, or you can buy them individually if you want to. And they are the Brilliant Wings dies. And then we have the Butterfly Bijou 6x6 Designer Series paper pack and the Natural Touch Specialty Natural Touch Specialty paper, which is like a wood grain, really pretty paper. You can get everything together in a big bundle. You can buy it all individually, however you want to do it, but definitely you will want it. The stamp set and dies are going to be carrying forward as a bundle into the next annual catalog, so those are going to be around for a little bit, so those are not quite as urgent to get if you want to wait a little bit. But the two papers in this bundle are actually only while supplies last through May 3rd. So make sure you get those ordered soon because those will be going away. Actually, May is not all that far away. When I look at the calendar, I'm sort of shocked that we're already almost halfway through March. What's happened to the year? So, all right. So let's get going on the card. To start with, again, all the details will be posted out on my blog tomorrow, and I will share the link in this video once the blog post goes live tomorrow around 8 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. But the cardstock cuts and everything will be listed out there, as well as the list of products that I used and a printable PDF. So if you want to hang off until tomorrow and go look at all that on my blog, you can definitely do that, or come back and check out the video, and you'll see it tomorrow as well. But I have got some of the True Love Designer Series paper that I have cut to 3 5/8 by 4 7/8. And I'm using a little Stampin' Seal, and we are going to adhere that to a piece of basic black cardstock that I have cut to 3 3/4 by 5. And again, I'm just going to try to get it lined up here as best I can, straight and even all the way around the edges. And I don't know why the diamond pattern sort of throws me for a minute. I kind of have to really look at that one to make sure that I'm getting it stuck on the card on the panel straight. All right, for the background, again, I did some of this ahead because it's not like terribly exciting or really awesome coloring, and it's just the same thing over and over again. So I figured I did a few pieces ahead, and we're going to do a few here on screen. So I have stamped these ahead of time in Tuxedo Black Memento ink on a piece of basic white cardstock, and I let it dry so that we wouldn't have any issues, because sometimes Tuxedo Black can take a minute to dry. And I have got, whoops, that's not the end I want the brush end of my Petal Pink Stampin' Blends marker. This is the light one, and again, I'm just doing my usual thing where I'm just laying color down on the image, not being too terribly careful with it at this point. Really ever, because they're easy enough to fix. You can color them and make them look pretty, even if you've kind of slapped the ink on like I usually do. And I'm being probably coloring a little more than I probably should be on it. If I were going to be worrying about doing a lot of really detailed blending, I probably would have colored smaller sections of the flower. But for this flower, because there's so much shading on it already, I feel like I don't have to do a lot of really detailed blending on it. So I'm just coming back in here with my dark Petal Pink Stampin' Blends marker, and I'm adding in some dark areas in the spots where I feel like it would be a little bit darker if I were looking at the flower. So like behind the petals up here, I'm doing that kind of down towards the center where it meets up by the center of the flower. I'm putting a little bit of dark coloring in there. And I'm probably missing all kinds of comments. So hey, Kay, thanks for hopping in, and I appreciate that. So again, just adding in a little dark shading in, and I want to make sure that I get that little spot here in between the two flowers and get that with some dark shading on it. And then I'm just going to come back and really kind of almost flick the light Petal Pink over the dark that I have just added, and just sort of, I'm not even really blending it. I'm just sort of trying to move the color a little bit so that it's not quite as much of a stark line between the two. And that's really all that I did for coloring on these. They're very, like I said, it's a really kind of a forgiving image. So if you want one that's easy to color, to try out blends with for the first time, definitely get this stamp set, because it's just, a lot of the shading is already done for you in the stamped image, which is nice. So all you have to do is kind of put color over the top of it and then do a tiny little bit of blending, and you will be all set. So again, on the second flower, I'm just coming in with my light Petal Pink and putting it all over most of the image. I mean, I didn't get every single little spot on there, but just covered most of it. And then I'm going to come back in here, anywhere where I think there would be a darker area on the flower. Again, anywhere where it's kind of got a petal in front of it, I'm putting some color on it. and kind of down here towards the center of the flower where it likely would be a little bit darker. This leaf is almost, or leaf, petal is almost completely curled over, so I feel like that one would be a little bit darker, and then I did a little bit of dark shading on that one, and then coming back in again with my light, and I'm using the brush end on these and just sort of flicking the color up to blend it just a little so that it doesn't have any kind of harsh lines on it, but just super simple to use. So that is all the coloring for the flower petals. At least I think they're really easy to use. And like I said, some of the floral images to me are really good ones if you are just learning to use blends or any alcohol marker. Start with your floral images because those are really, they're very forgiving, and you know, you can always color over the top of it with a different color. If you decide that, oops, that was supposed to be a petal and, you know, not a leaf, and you've colored it one way, then you can always just come back and color over it with something else. All right, so we've got our flower done. The only thing we have left to do is a couple of the little leaves here. And I forgot to say because I was busy talking. This is So Saffron that I used to color the center, and I used the dark So Saffron on there. I didn't use any of the light because with that much shading on it, I tried to use the light on my initial sample, but you couldn't even tell that I'd really colored it because it's got so much of the dark ink on it already. Hey, Diane, thanks for joining, and no worries about being late. You know, if you really want to watch me again, you can always always watch the replay. See, I start talking and apparently I cannot color and talk at the same time. So I have got Mint Macaron Stampin' Blends markers, and I'm using the light one first, and then I'm going to come back in with the dark. And again, I'm just going to add a little bit of the dark down near the bottom and kind of up the center of the vein where I feel like it would be a little darker naturally on your leaves, and then come back in with my light and just kind of do that same little sort of flicking motion to blend a little bit and make sure there are no harsh lines, and that's really all there is to it. So that is the basic coloring system that I use. So the stamp set, sorry, you did miss it in the catalog. Let me pull it up here. And thank you, Rosie, you are correct. It is the Delicate Petals stamp set. So this is the stamp set, and it has a coordinating set of dies called Lacy Petals dies, and you can get them in the current mini catalog, and they're for a 10% discount, so if you order them together. Okay, so we've got the basics of the background done. We've got our two flowers colored, and I know that I want them to kind of go on the card front like this. Again, just because I've had them, had this card done and laid out, I generally know where I want them to go. If I hadn't done the card ahead of time, I would probably get my sentiment done first and then lay that over the center and make sure that everything fit before I started gluing things down. But I'm going to be brave and go ahead and use a couple glue dots and stick things to the card front. So I'm going to use glue dots, and I will put them kind of towards the center of the flowers. Again, that's sort of where I try to stick them when I'm using any sort of adhesive on this type of an image where I'm going to be tucking the leaves behind it. I usually try to put the adhesive a little bit more towards the center so that I've got some space to tuck the leaves in around it. Kind of can slide them in underneath the die cut that I've got on there so that I don't have to worry about accidentally hitting an adhesive dot and then having to chop my leaves all to pieces because I've got, adhesive stuck in a place where I want my leaves instead. All right, we're going to go ahead and put this one down here and just sort of tap it down. I'm not going to smush it down until I get everything kind of put together on it, but I've got some of the leaves, so I've got 3 of the larger leaves, hopefully, and 3 of the smaller leaves here. And I just took 3 leaves and tucked them back behind the flowers that I had put on here. And again, because I didn't really smoosh down the flowers yet, they're fairly easy to lift and put these little leaves underneath. And I'm sticking them down with glue dots because, again, it's easy, and I'm all about easy. You can use liquid glue if you want to, but I find that gets a little messy, particularly when you're doing this kind of thing where you're tucking things underneath and you get a big smear of glue on the card, and, that's not necessarily my favorite look, so that's why I tend to use glue dots instead. And I'm going to tuck this in underneath here, put the smaller leaf next to it, again just using a glue dot to stick it down. And then my final leaf I'm going to put over, kind of hanging off the right hand side here, tucked in between the flowers, like that. So that is basically it for the flowers on here. So pretty simple. I'm going to stick them down here well now that I've kind of got everything placed where I want it to be. Next up, I have got some of the Petal Pink organdy or 5/8 inch organdy striped ribbon. And I'm just going to put it in a little Z formation across. Z formation, is that probably an official sounding term, but not really. Just in a little Z across the card front. And yep, I'm just taking my adhesive and just slapping it right over the center here because this is all going to be covered. Hopefully you can see where I added the adhesive on there. It's going to be covered by the sentiment, so I don't care that the adhesive looks a little not as pretty as it could on here. So I'm just going to take my ribbon, leave it on the spool because, you know, sometimes I use more, sometimes I use less, depending on how wide my Z ends up getting. And then I'm going to take it and tack it down here with the adhesive that I've got on my card front. And then the final piece, I'm going to take it and move it across here and stick it down as well, and then trim it off. Hopefully, trim it off. There we go. All right, and that's it for sticking down the ribbon. Now, if you want to, and you know this is bothering you, if you don't like it where it's sort of flapping in the breeze, you can take a little more adhesive and stick it to itself if you want to. But again, because I'm putting a sentiment right over the top of it, you know, as long as it's basically adhered enough to hold it, that's all that I really need it to be. All right, for my sentiment, I've got some Petal Pink cardstock, and the sentiment I used from this is the wishing a lovely birthday to you. And we're going to use Versamark ink, and we're going to heat emboss it with gold embossing powder since I've got a few gold accessories that I'm going to add on it. So I'm going to hopefully make sure this is good and inky before I stamp it on the cardstock. And because I'm die cutting this, I don't necessarily care where I stamp it on my cardstock. I can put it wherever it's convenient, just making sure it's not too close to either of the edges or the bottom of it. And I've got my gold embossing powder here. I'm just going to take a spoon and generously pour it on, and then flick the cardstock to get all the little extras off. And that is our sentiment. And then I'm going to take my lid and put it back on my embossing powder before I end up accidentally knocking that over. And I have got my heat tool here, and I'm going to turn it on to the level 2 of the heat tool, level 2 setting on the heat tool. Level 1 is for drying, level 2 is for heat embossing. So just flip it onto the level 2, give it a second to heat up, and then point it at your cardstock, and you'll see the embossing powder start to turn kind of a shiny gold color, and that's when you know that it's done. You've cooked it enough. You can burn embossing powder because I've done it before. So just make sure that you don't overheat it, but you want to get the pretty gold shine on it, and then that is all good. All right, the die that we are using to cut it out, again, is from the Tasteful Labels dies, and I'm going to be using this one, which is the kind of larger rectangular one. I'm just going to put it right around the sentiment and run it through my die cutting machine, which is over here to my right-hand side, so I don't wiggle the table too much when I'm doing my die cutting. Hopefully y'all are enjoying your Tuesday. It is absolutely beautiful here today. We're finally, the snow is significantly melting. Yay! We've lost huge piles of snow in the backyard, which I'm happy about. I'm actually starting to see green grass underneath, so always good news. And I think we're up into the low 60s today, which, you know, last week it was like 29 for the high, and this week we're at 60. So, all right, so I have done my die cutting and my sentiment. Next up, and I realized that I forgot to add it to a block, but I can do that speedy quick here, is the little dot image from the Delicate Petals stamp set. I've got Petal Pink ink, and I'm just going to stamp it kind of in the corners to give it a little, I don't know, sort of ink splattery type look on the edges of my die cut panel. So no special way to stamp it. I just kind of stamped it 5 or 6 times on each side and called it good. Some of it's overlapped stamping, some of it is not. So that's all, just to add a little bit of something different to look at on it, that's all. So sunny and 48 near Albany today. Oh, it's supposed to be in the 60s. Yay. So sun is out now, but you're getting cloudy and waiting for a new oh, don't be sending that new snowstorm our way. I'm done with snow for this year, Rosie, so you can keep it, thank you. So, all right, I've got a couple Stampin' Dimensionals that I'm going to be, well, my half Stampin' Dimensionals that I chopped up that I'm going to be adhering the sentiment to the card front with. And I am going to make sure that I stick them sort of out to the edges on this sentiment, just because I want to make sure that I catch the actual cardstock at least in a few places. Otherwise, it'll just be stuck to the ribbon, and that won't hold it very well. So you want to make sure that you end up with at least one or two of your Stampin' Dimensionals that are actually stuck to the cardstock and not just to your ribbon when you're putting it on a card front like this. All right, so we have got this. Now comes the fun part of trying to make sure that I get it stuck on here somewhat straight and somewhat centered. So, which is, again, is generally easier when I don't have a camera in between me and what I'm stamping, but I think I got it fairly well, hopefully fairly straight. I'll give it a little smoosh down. And then I'm going to take a couple Stampin' Dimensionals and adhere it to the back of my card front. Back of my card front, does that make sense? Yeah, I think so. And then my Stampin' Dimensionals, I ran out of my half ones, so I'll show you really quickly how I chop mine up. I just go right down the middle of the row and cut them in half. And I just like the way the half ones work better. They fit in many, many places for me, and I really like them. So, all right, let me peel the backs off the dimensionals, and then we'll put this on the card front and add a couple little embellishments, and the card front's going to be all done. This is Petal Pink for the card base. And this one is actually cut to 4 1/4. I'm sorry, this one is cut to 5 1/2 by 8 1/2 and scored at 4 1/4. My actual original card I had cut as a 4 1/4 by 11, scored at 5 1/2. But it works either way. Whichever way is your preferred card base, that's the one you can use. So I've got a couple of my favorite little embellishments, the gold glitter enamel dots that we're going to be sticking around here on the card front. And just going to put one of the bigger ones up here on the petal. One of the more, I don't know, medium size. Is that what these, whoop, I guess that one decided is the one it wants to be. So I'm going to put that one maybe over here, kind of up by my ribbon, I think. And then a small one up here on the sentiment. And kind of try to keep them in groups of 3 when I can, because I guess that's an art rule. But that's it for the card front. So again, it's super simple, just a little bit of easy coloring with the Stampin' Blends, a little bit of ribbon, a little bit of embossing, and it's done. So on the inside of the card, I kept it also fairly simple. I've got basic white cardstock and tuxedo black memento ink, and I'm going to stamp, hopefully, my flower image. If I can get it inked up well here on the corner of the card front, or on the corner of the card front, on the corner of the, you know what, that doesn't look like it's inked very well in the center. On the corner of the basic white cardstock panel is what I'm trying to say. So this panel is cut to 4 by 5 1/4. And just going to stamp it over the edge and lift it off, and that's all there is for the stamping on the inside of the card. And then I'm going to pull my Stampin' Blends over again and just do some really quick coloring with them. I probably should have stamped it ahead of time so that it had a few more minutes to dry, but hopefully it'll be good because I'm talking a lot. And hopefully I'm not going to be smudging. Yep, looks like it's good. So I've got the light Petal Pink ink, Stampin' Blends marker, and again I'm just doing some quick coloring over the flower image with the light, and then I'm going to come back in with the dark and not put a Stampin' Dimensional right in the middle of what I'm coloring. Those darn covers stick to everything. I haven't found too many on the dog yet, but I'm sure, I find them in odd places inside my shoes. And I'm like, how in the world did I get a Stampin' Dimensional cover inside my shoe? I don't know, but they're there. So then I'm going to do come back in with that kind of little flicking motion with the light Stampin' Blends to kind of blend the ink just a tiny bit, and then finish up by coloring the remaining petals of the flower that you can see here with light Stampin' Blends marker, the light Petal Pink, and whoop, I can see there's a little naked spot up here, and then come back in here with the dark, and again just add in where I feel like there would be a darker area on the flower, and then come back and do the kind of flick coloring over the top with the light. And then the only thing we have left is the flower centers, and I'm going to use my dark So Saffron Stampin' Blends marker to add a little color to the center of the flowers. And the inside of the card is all done. So super, super simple on the inside. If I can find my adhesive, we will be doing well. So I'm going to use Stampin' Seal to adhere that to the inside of the card base. And we're going to be all done with the card for today. So thanks so much to everybody for joining today. I appreciate you being here, and we'll plan to see you on my YouTube channel live on Friday around 2 o'clock Eastern Time, and then back here again next week, Tuesday, around 2 o'clock Eastern Time, live on Facebook. So this is the card we made ahead of time. This is the one we made here on screen today. So I appreciate you joining me. Hopefully you love the card, and you definitely need to get this stamp set bundle if you don't have it. Get it. Play with it. It's fun. It's easy to color. All of my favorite things, pretty and easy. So that's it for my card share today. So I appreciate you being here. Thanks again. Have a great rest of your week, and we will plan to chat with you on Friday and again next week, Tuesday. And again, all the details will be posted on my blog tomorrow, so you can stop by and check that out if you want to see all the measurements and the cardstock cuts and everything that I used on it. Thanks again for joining. We'll talk soon.